In the days when the judges ruled Israel, a season marked by instability, moral decline, and cycles of disobedience, a famine strikes the land of Bethlehem in Judah. A man named Elimelech leaves his homeland with his wife Naomi and their 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion, seeking survival in the foreign land of Moab. What begins as a temporary escape turns into a long stay, and while in Moab, tragedy unfolds. Elimelech dies, leaving Naomi a widow in a strange land. Her sons take Moabite wives, Orpah and Ruth, but after about 10 years, both sons also die. Naomi is left without her husband and without her sons, a devastating reality in a culture where family lineage and male protection were essential for survival. Hearing that the Lord has provided food again in Bethlehem, Naomi decides to return home. She sets out with her 2 daughters-in-law, but along the journey, she urges them to return to their own families, recognizing the hardship that awaits them in Judah. Naomi expresses her bitterness, believing the hand of the Lord has turned against her. Orpah tearfully returns to her people, but Ruth refuses to leave.
Wherever you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and nothing but death will separate us.
Naomi and Ruth arrive in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. The town is stirred by Naomi's return, but she insists on being called Mara, meaning bitter, because of the grief she carries. Despite her sorrow, a quiet thread of divine providence begins to unfold. Ruth, taking initiative to provide for them, goes out to glean in the fields, a provision in Israelite law that allowed the poor to gather leftover grain. By what appears to be chance, she finds herself working in a field belonging to Boaz, a wealthy and respected man who is also a relative of Elimelech. Boaz notices Ruth and inquires about her. Upon hearing of her loyalty to Naomi and her sacrificial decision to leave her homeland, Boaz shows her extraordinary kindness. He instructs his workers to protect her, allows her to glean among the sheaves, and even ensures extra grain is left behind for her. He blesses her, acknowledging that she has taken refuge under the wings of the God of Israel. Ruth returns to Naomi with an abundant supply of food, and Naomi begins to recognize that God has not abandoned them. She identifies Boaz as a kinsman redeemer, a family member with the legal right to redeem their family line and restore their inheritance. Naomi devises a plan for Ruth to approach Boaz, seeking his protection and redemption. Following Naomi's instructions, Ruth goes to the threshing floor at night, where Boaz is sleeping after the harvest. In a culturally significant act, she uncovers his feet and lies down, signaling a request for him to cover her with his protection and take on the role of redeemer. When Boaz awakens and discovers Ruth, he responds with integrity and compassion. He praises her for not pursuing younger men and acknowledges her noble character. However, he explains that there is another relative closer than he who has the first right to redeem. Boaz promises to resolve the matter honorably. The next day, Boaz goes to the town gate, the place of legal transactions, and presents the situation before the elders. The nearer kinsman initially agrees to redeem the land that belonged to Elimelech, but when he learns that redemption also requires marrying Ruth to preserve the family line, he declines, unwilling to jeopardize his own inheritance. Boaz then publicly declares his intent to redeem both the land and Ruth. The transaction is sealed according to custom, and the elders bless the union, invoking the legacy of Israel's matriarchs. Boaz marries Ruth, and the Lord grants her a son. Naomi, who once saw her life as empty and bitter, now holds a child in her arms. The women of Bethlehem rejoice with her, proclaiming that her Redeemer has come, and that Ruth, who loves her, is better to her than 7 sons. The child is named Obed, and he becomes the father of Jesse, the father of David. In this way, the story that began with famine, loss, and despair ends with restoration, joy, and a legacy that reaches into the royal lineage of Israel. The Book of Ruth reveals the quiet but powerful work of God's providence, showing how faithfulness, loyalty, and righteousness in ordinary lives can shape extraordinary outcomes. It highlights God's inclusion of outsiders, as Ruth the Moabite becomes part of the covenant people and the lineage of King David, ultimately pointing forward to a greater redemption that will come through that line.